Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, we go in depth with the V team. You get to know a little bit more about who they are and what they care about. We also have some special clips from behind the scenes. This and much, much more. You're watching The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics. We are The V. We're doing a little bit different show this week because we're featuring our V team. Charlanna Spencer is here with us. She's our first guest today. Welcome. Good morning. Welcome. You know, we've started the show. We've been going for a while, and people keep asking, who are the V team? Who are these people? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who are these people? Mm-hmm. So we decided to do this special edition to give folks a chance to get to know everybody on the team. And most folks know that you're an attorney, but that's about it, and that you're a political insider. Well, isn't that enough? Your most colorful guests are Claire and Barron. I'm your least interesting person. Well, I don't know that I would agree with that. I think you're very interesting. I think you've done some high-profile cases that certainly were recognized around the state, and you have a great sense of humor, and you got great hair. I mean, what else is there? Well, thanks. You know, and apparently, according to your wife, great shoes. Yes. Well, shoes are important to women that I've learned over the years. Could you tell us a little bit about your background? Sure. I was born and raised in Dothan, and that's where most of my family still is today. I went to law school at Cumberland in Birmingham. Love Birmingham, love Montgomery, and practiced law here now for 15 years. For 7 of those, one of the things that I did, and it's what gives me sort of the political angle to it, is through the Alabama Law Institute, I served as legal counsel to 2 of the House committees, Commerce and Education. And so through that, I developed a love of the process, a love of the people that work there. You know, the staff in the State House are incredible folks. They're dedicated and wonderful people to work with. So that's kind of how I bring the political perspective to it. And one of the things that you really understand well is campaign finance. Another one is gaming. Is that correct? Sure. Most people know that the kind of law that I practice focuses on gaming. Most folks probably don't know that before I did gaming, I did water law. Really? Both heavily regulated entities. And so that's why it kind of transitions very easily from one to the other. How did you, I mean, what piqued your interest in politics? I mean, has this been a lifelong thing, or you got a job, or? You know, I think it's probably been a lifelong thing. Politics affects everything we do every day, from the time that we wake up in the morning to the time that we go to bed at night, the kind of car that we can drive, the way, the regulations for our drinking water, the regulations for the air that we breathe. So everything boils down to what the politicians do at the State House every year and in Congress. What do you think are the most important issues that are facing our state right now? I think it's the same 3 issues that every state faces. The first would be making sure that our children don't go hungry. You can't focus and study if your tummy is grumbling. I think the second issue that our state faces is health care. 15% of Alabamians don't have health care, and that's one of the big issues right now, is whether or not to expand Medicaid. And I know folks in the administration who have talked about it have just said, well, Medicaid is very confusing, so we don't want any part of that. And I think we have to have a solution. If you don't like the Affordable Care Act, I think that you've got to bring something else to the table. And I think the third issue is education. I don't think that we can pull money out of our schools and expect the teachers to perform and the students to excel. Well, we're a poor state. I mean, we've traditionally been a poor state, and yet we have a lot of folks that are struggling to make it. But our government decides to continue to slash benefits for children, to slash benefits that might go to, say, the food stamp program and things like that. I mean, and they say because we can't afford it. I mean, what's your argument with that?
Well, my argument is this. Just in the last couple of weeks, we recognized the 50th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's assassination. And one of the things that he said during his inaugural address is, in a free society, if we can't save the many who are poor, we can't save the few who are rich. And so I think that we have to start looking at the folks who are the least among us, and how do we help them be fed, have health care, and be educated so that they can turn into productive citizens who are part of the job force, who help increase our tax base, and are just productive members of society.
We know the many problems with Obamacare, but one portion of Obamacare was the expansion of Medicaid, which would have brought in not only children, but adults, and for the first time, men. You know, men are not, well, I mean, men are not covered by any of those types of programs. It's only women and children. The governor's flatly said he's going to not institute it, even though many people have said it's a great idea. What's your thoughts on that?
My thought is this. I've seen the studies that say that Medicaid expansion is critical for Alabama and for those citizens. You know, this is the other thing to remember, that out of the 15% that I mentioned just a moment ago of Alabamians who don't have health care, 77% of that 15% have family members who work, either part-time or full-time. I mean, so these aren't people who are not working.
Right.
These aren't the so-called welfare queens that are sitting on the porch. These are folks that are honestly trying to do a day's work, and they deserve to have health care. And it's our job as a society, as a state, to figure out how we provide them with those benefits because they can't provide them for themselves.
I know we did a report one time on how many people at Walmart that work at Walmart actually have to apply for Medicaid, and they have to apply for
food stamps.
For food stamps and various things. Even though they say they're employed, they're underemployed. And that seems to be a big problem that we have, is that we're getting jobs into the state, but we're not getting living wages.
Well, and also we've got to look at, you know, the children who need these kinds of services as well, the parents who need to be healthy to be able to work to provide for those children. And so I would love to see the studies that say that Medicaid expansion is bad for Alabama. Like I said, I've seen plenty of studies that say that it's good, and I certainly, as a lawyer, am used to looking at both sides of an issue. And so if there are studies out there that would show or prove that Medicaid expansion is bad for Alabama, I certainly would like to see them, because I haven't.
Well, I'm certainly glad that we have you on the show. You do a great job, and you do great analysis, and thank you for sharing this time with us. And we'll be back, won't we?
Thank you. Glad to be here, as always.
We'll be right back with Baron Coleman, a member of the V team. You're watching the V.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Big lights and bright colors, the future is drawing near with new thoughts and ideas. My dreams, they all start right here. So I take a step and time will tell. I'm filling up high like a wishing well. I got big dreams to take over the world. I got
I think someone at my friend's school has this thing called autism. My friend's brother's son has autism. My neighbor's son has autism. My son has autism.
Autism is getting closer to home. Today, 1 in 88 children is diagnosed with autism. That's a 1,000% increase in the last 40 years. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Welcome to the V. You know, this is a special occasion. Today we call Meet the V Team, and I'm happy to have with me right now Baron Coleman. Baron, great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
You know, you and I have worked together on a few things. You do a lot of interesting work. Probably not all of it we can talk about, but people out there want to know a lot about you, or a little about you. We've had a lot of folks call in or email and say, who is Baron Coleman? And we're going to give them a chance to find out a little bit about you. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm an attorney by trade. Went to law school out of state and came in 2006 and been here pretty much ever since. I've worked at a couple of different firms here in Montgomery, represented insurance companies, represented Colonial Bank at one time, and sort of moved into politics in the last few years. Got into politics doing background research, primarily looking through financial reports, tracking money under the old PAC-to-PAC system. There was a market for that, and sort of broke in that way. It's not something you would show up on very many finance reports yourself, because typically you subcontract through, and when you're doing background research on people, you don't typically want people to know you're doing it. So you sort of stay down the list and behind the scenes, and over time I've sort of earned the trust of a few folks and have gotten a chance to do several other things.
Well, I mean, that's hard, tedious work, I know, because doing investigative reported work is very similar to what you do. You just don't print what you find.
I print it, but I don't print it for public consumption.
Yeah, I understand. How did you get involved in politics to begin with? I mean, was this a childhood interest or something that just came along?
It was. My parents were what I would call active television watchers. They would watch TV and give running commentary the entire time. We would watch the evening news at the dinner table every night, and they would explain why what was being said was either right or wrong and give an explanation for it. I learned from a very young age that there was an explanation for a lot of the things that were going on, that it wasn't arbitrary, that there were underlying hidden motives behind the scenes. And I had an interest in wanting to know what those things were. You know, I've read a lot of books and tried to figure out the best way to sort of make myself a part of that. And I found that doing some of the behind the scenes stuff was the best way to get into it, and what I like the most.
It's a lot of fun sometimes.
It is. You do feel like an investigative reporter. You're putting stories together. You've got to tell a story to somebody that, you know, they hire you because they don't want to spend the time to do it.
Right.
I mean, and that's just the reality. And so they give you a small sum of money, and you go out and spend the time doing it. And you become an investigative reporter. You got to be inquisitive. You got to ask why. You've got to draw family relationships, money relationships, business relationships, and then point that out to somebody in a format that they can digest.
I mean, typically, it's just lonely work, though, isn't it? I mean, it isn't exciting except when you put it all together.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, I was sort of one of those children that sat around doing puzzles at 3 in the morning, you know, at age 9, 10, 11 years old. I enjoy doing that kind of stuff, being by myself, being behind the scenes, making it all fit together. And to me, breaking into the field that way was sort of like putting puzzles together at home alone at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, long hours, but it's fun and it's rewarding.
It is that. It is very much trying to fit the pieces together and see who's doing what and who's getting what. Our state is moving forward. We've seen a lot of changes. What are some of the issues that you think are facing Alabama that need to be addressed?
I think there's 3 primary issues. One's immediate, and it's corruption in the state of Alabama. There is, you know, we've talked about it on the show several times, these rumors of grand juries and these types of things. I've seen a lot of what I would call corruption. I mean, just if you just had to call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
And I think it's detrimental to the state. It's detrimental to the public. It's detrimental to the process. Everybody loses faith in what's going on. So I think that's kind of the primary thing that must be addressed immediately. I think on a short-term basis, prison reform is in dire needs here in Alabama. I think it needs to be, from immediate to the next 2 years, needs to be dealt with before the feds come in and force us to let them take over our system. You know, in Alabama, we like to push the feds off, and we don't want federal control. Right. But with prison reform, they're coming in if we don't do something about it.
Right.
We have one of the most overcrowded and underfunded prison systems in the entire country. And it's something that needs to be dealt with. And I think long term, we need to reform the way we collect taxes in the state. You know, we tax groceries. A lot of out-of-state people, especially the military people, come in and can't believe that they go to the grocery store and spend $200. They got to put another $20 on top of that in taxes. It's very regressive, hurts the poor the hardest, and you know, it's just not very equitable, I don't think, and I think that needs to be addressed among other tax changes to be perhaps a little more fair in the way we address our needs as a state and maybe have a little more reliable revenue.
You know, going back to the investigative work that you and I have spent a lot of time talking about, I mean, we see right now, as you put it, corruption. We know it's there. Right. It's just we have to find prosecutors that have the willingness to do something about it. And you and I have talked about it. Matt Hart is a guy that seems like he's willing to do it, and he's conducting that grand jury down in Lee County.
Well, you hear his name a lot. He's a sort of mysterious figure. Very few people have met him. He sort of operates behind the scenes. I think it's even simpler than that, though. We don't have an inquisitive press in the state of Alabama. There are very few reporters who are willing to stand up and challenge the government. I think I heard you say one time, we have a press that's more scared of the government than the government is of the press, and that's a dangerous situation in Alabama.
Well, I think we're trying to correct that here at the V, aren't we?
Well, and that's one reason I agreed to do it, because you've been one of the few out there willing to challenge government when they need to be challenged.
I appreciate you being here. Very thankful.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Baron Coleman will be right back with Claire Austin. You're watching the V.
The next 30 seconds can save you a lot of money. Just do your laundry in cold and stick to full loads. Auto-sleep your computers. Plug your gadgets in a power strip and switch it off when you're done. Headed out? Turn back your thermostat by 10 degrees. And drive sensibly. The more energy you save, the more money you save. Find other great tips at energysaver.gov.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Welcome back to the Voice of Alabama Politics. You are watching the V. This is a special edition of our show in which we have the V team as our guest, and our very special guest is Claire Austin. Glad to have you, Claire.
Good morning. Glad to be here and glad to be a part of this fun team.
Well, you are a significant part of it. I mean, you come from a long line of Republicans that have supported the state, have done lots of great things here, and sort of a dynasty, really. And so when I asked you to come on the show and you said yes, I felt like we had scored a home run. So
well, thank
all
you.
the thanks is on my end. A lot of folks know you around the state, especially in politics, but some of our viewers don't, and they'd love to know more about you. Could you share a bit about your family, your history, and how you got here?
Well, I like to tell people that I was born a Republican in 1964. My mother was a very active Republican. She still is today and has been on the state executive committees, as she says, when she was Republican when Republican wasn't cool and when they used to meet in the phone booth back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And of course, she actually ran in a county office as Republican in 1964 during the Goldwater days, and of course was defeated in a black belt county. My grandmother also was from Georgia, and she was the national committee woman for the GOP for the state of Georgia, and also was the state chairman of the Georgia Federation of Republican Women.
Wow.
So there's been a long history of Republican politics in my family. I have worked for one Democrat in my life, and that was when I was 8 years old, and I did work for Governor Albert Brewer. And that was the Wallace Brewer days, so back then I guess that would have been a Republican and a Democrat.
Yeah, well, Governor Brewer is a well-respected man still today, I would say. Well, it sounds like you come from a family of very strong women, and you are certainly considered one around the State House. How How did you, I mean, I guess you just were born into this. There's no...
Well, you know, I was very active in high school. And, you know, you start out as a child where you're either born a leader or you're not, and, you know, ran for different offices. And I actually one thing that I did I thought was very instrumental for down the road was I was chosen to go to Girls State of Alabama.
Oh, that's great.
When I was in high school, and I went and I was actually ran for lieutenant governor and was elected lieutenant governor. And George McMillan was the lieutenant governor at that time, back in the early 80s. So I spent the day with him and did that. And then I interned, you know, in Washington, D.C. my summers and when I was in college at Auburn. And I worked in news and radio and TV, both. And I decided to move to Washington, D.C. So that's where I really started my career.
Right.
Well, I left Alabama after I finished Auburn and went to D.C. and spent almost 12 years there and worked entirely in Republican politics, except for I worked for Russell Corporation at one time.
Well, and you also served with the two attorney generals here.
I did.
And if you tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I guess I would say that I had the honor to serve with two wonderful attorney generals and very fine men. One is our U.S. Senator Jeff Sessions. I worked for him. And then also Bill Pryor, who is a federal judge on the 11th Circuit Court. And I did public relations and legislative work for both of those gentlemen. And then I did do something very exciting with Bill Pryor. Prior to him becoming nominated to a federal judgeship, he and I started, really, I guess, at my kitchen table, a group called the Republican Attorney Generals Association. And at that time, there were only 5 Republican Attorney Generals in the United States of America. So we worked with those 5 and went before the National Republican Committee and got the group, you know, sanctioned, organized, and that was very fun and exciting.
Wow.
But I was back here in Alabama, and after I helped get Pryor elected to his second term, his first term, I'm sorry, he was appointed by Governor Fob James, and then he had to run for a full term. Then I started up and opened my lobbying and PR firm business in '99.
Well, it sounds like it's been absolutely exciting ride so far.
Well, it has. I laugh and told people, I said, I spent 12 years in D.C. and I moved back to Alabama to be with my family and where I could slow down, and I felt like I've just been on a full ride for almost 20 years now.
Well, you stay on the run. I know that. You know, there are a lot of important issues facing our state, and we've talked about this. We talk about this a lot. Are there certain things that are on your mind that we think we need to focus on?
Well, I'll go back, and here we are in 2013, when I moved back to Alabama in January 1995 to work for Governor Fob James as Assistant Finance Director. And I look at the things in state government that were problems and issues. It is the exact 2 state agencies to this day. We've had people in leadership positions, governors come in and try to fix them. It's still the Medicaid agency, and it's still corrections. Those were both 2 boiling pots in state government in 1995, and those issues both still lie there. And granted, we had another governor, we had some corruption, a lot of people went to jail. We turned the State House completely over in 2010, and now we are looming of corruption everywhere else again. And we wonder why the citizens of this state lose trust in our government.
Well, and it is a sad thing. I mean, we talk about this all the time, that, you know, there are good people, there are honest, hardworking people like the folks you've worked with over the years who try to do the right thing, but there always seems to be a corrupting element. I think about that saying, you know, absolute power corrupts, absolutely, but maybe it's just power attracts the corruptible.
It does, it does. I mean, there's some wonderful men that are in politics and women as well. And like I said, I've been blessed and worked with 2 wonderful ones, about 2 or 3. But, you know, and it's very disenchanting to me because, as you said, or we've just discussed, I've been a Republican pretty much all my life. But I can see black and white. I can work both issues. And there's plenty of friends of mine that are Democrats and independents and everything else. I don't have any problem with that. But it is very disenchanting after all these years for us to gain control over both houses, in the House and Senate in Alabama, and for all these corruptions and talking of grand jury and everything. So many of us have worked so hard to get there, and look what's happening.
Well, I know it is for me too, but you're not going to quit working for the good stuff, and neither am I. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here on the show and for your friendship. You've been a good friend to me and Susan. We want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we leave today, I want to share with you a few funny clips of the V. We don't always get it right, so here's a little laughter for you. Remember, you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you. See you soon. Put a picture of Charlanna on there. Go.
Yeah, that's the thing. Can we divide this up?
Thank you for joining us this.
Sorry.
Do you have any crocodile skin coasters or something that's worthy
have
of
some,
my mug?
I have some that are cinnamon.
What?
You want to smile?
Coming up next on the V, our guest is Senator Sam. Way in the
Like
background.
all good political donors,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Did they wire Rufus?
They're part of a foundation. Clubbed her like a baby seal. Nancy Pelosi clubbed Charlotte Meadows like a baby seal. We'll be back right with Scott Bison. That's my redneck teleprompter right there.
Since we are Republicans over here,
Everybody interested in the plant.
Scott Beeson, are you listening?
Hey, I voted for all these Republican people. Like, I think they making fun of me now. What?
We were.
Well,
I have to put it in my pocket if there were Scott Beeson.
Thank my bottle.
No, I thought you were keeping on rolling. I was just messing
Are we
with
done?
you.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
mean for us to stop and not say it right.
Charlotte was down at the beach right before the elections, got clubbed like a baby seal. Charlotte Meadows got beaten like a rented mule. What?
Come on.
I may never recover.
My hero! Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Let's do it live.
Taking his jacket off.
Let's do it live. Let's do it live.
Well, he seriously says you called Brian Taylor handsome.
Well, I'm making up with him.
Now,
you just
Rob-
outed me as the guy who did the poll.
Now, Rob, now,
You know, the big poll you showed me on your computer that you
Did
only
you
you
know, no, that you showed me.
Does Mark White have somebody back here ready to serve us with letter?
Y'all, I'm just letting y'all
Joel,
do
is it
all
you?
that talking.
back away from the iPad, woman. Try not to scratch anything this week. These people make a lot of money here. Me, I'm barely getting by. We're gonna come back here and beat you like a rented mule.
There's the
I'm
rented
gonna beat
mule.
you like Charlotte Meadows.
You're gonna give us some insight that we can normal. Can we start over again? I screwed that all up.
Hey, look at mommy.
Maybe the light hurts his eyes.
Maybe she's just not hungry. Maybe it's a phase.
Avoiding eye contact is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today.